You'll see them as well, just so you know.
Great, thank you.
It's been quite slow today, so.
And then when you leave, Joanna, if you could, I guess, pass it back to me.
Yes, yeah.
Perfect.
I will do that now, so I won't just shut down your
Okay,
session.
perfect. Passing the baton of host.
There we go.
Okay.
Right, you're live,
brilliant.
so I will leave you to it.
Okay, thank you, Joanna.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Brilliant. All right. That's great. So it looks like we've got 14 people in the waiting room.
Fab.
Brilliant. And we're live on YouTube. Perfect.
Amazing.
All right. So if it's all right with both of you, I'll leave you to your fabulous workshop and I will let in people from the waiting room.
Great. Yeah, go for it.
Have a wonderful workshop. Really, really looking forward
Thank
to
you.
it.
Thanks, Charlie.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, really nice to see you all here.
No, definitely.
I can see a few people are still connecting to audio and things, so we'll just give you a minute to get settled and get something to write on or dictate on if that's what you prefer. We're going to be doing quite a lot of short writing exercises in this workshop because we've only got an hour and we want to give you lots of different tools to go away and write happiness about. Oh, someone in the chat is saying hello from Berlin. Oh, cool. Thanks so much for joining us from Berlin. Thank you.
Hello from Cardiff. Amazing.
Fab. And yeah, we do really encourage everyone to use the chat as much as possible. If you want to, it's really nice to hear from you and have a chat with you as well. So that's what we're here for. Just see a couple more people are still joining. Oh, Margaret saying hi from Portugal. Oh, cool. Hi, Margaret. Hopefully, I'm a little bit jealous because I imagine it's probably really nice weather in Portugal and I'm in Edinburgh.
Yeah, I can feel that feeling as well. I'm in London and it has been very rainy where I am today. It's a bit sad. Okay, yeah, Carly is moderating, as you can see in the chat. Yeah, so she's put lots of useful information in there.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, there is the live transcript on, so it will be auto-captioned and you can just go to the bottom of your screen and there will be a button which says live transcript, and if you click on that, there will come up with a little drop-down menu and you can either say show subtitle or hide subtitle.
Yeah, and we will try and enunciate, which is something Elspeth tells me to do, and I will try and do so that the transcription works well.
Definitely, but also if anyone has any questions at any point, just pop them in the chat, and obviously you can ask about anything you want, and if something isn't clear or you don't understand, please do ask and we'll be putting all our instructions in the chat as well.
Yeah, we will. What do you think, Elspeth, about kicking off? Because I feel like there's still a couple more people coming through in the chat but the waiting room, but the flood seems to have kind of slowed.
Yeah, let's get started because we've only got an hour, short and sweet hour on a Friday evening. So yeah, let's get started.
Cool. Well, I will start by introducing myself and then Elspeth will introduce herself. And while I'm doing that, some people have already, which is lovely. But yeah, if you want to put your hello, where you're from, and if you want to your pronouns in the chat, that would be great as well, because it's lovely to know where everyone is signing in from today. So my name is Rachel. I'm a poet. I'm dialing in from London today, and we're here to do Writing Happiness, which is something I got interested in while working on my pamphlet. This is 3 Degrees of Separation, and it's about my experience of recovery from mental illness and kind of the love and laughter that I found in that experience, as well as all the difficult times as well. So that's kind of my route into writing about happiness. Elspeth, that's...
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Rachel. I can see we're getting a few people saying hi in the chat already. Someone from Roberta from Durham and Louise is from Belfast. And we've got a few people in different parts of England as well. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us this Friday evening. It's really nice to be with you. My name is Elspeth. My pronouns are she, her. Similarly to Rachel, I do quite a lot of writing around mental health, and also I do a lot of nature writing. So obviously that kind of comes with writing about climate crisis as well. But I really believe that even when we're writing about maybe difficult topics, it's really, really important to be able to both for ourselves as writers, as our own well-being, and for readers as well, to be able to have moments of hope and joy and levity as well. So it's something that I'm really interested in, and especially, you know, for marginalized writers in any way, I think it's really important. Sometimes we're expected to always be writing from a place of trauma and sadness, but like absolutely we should have permission to write about anything that we want. So yeah, it's just really nice to be here with you all this evening, and if anyone has any thoughts about writing happiness and whether they find it difficult or not, or whether it's something they do often, and feel free to share in the chat as well, because we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think a good question to start with is writing happiness something that people do often or not? And I'll just ask Elspeth if no one comments in the chat, but it'd be great to hear from you guys if it's something you've tried before.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. I'll be interested to see if anyone has anything that they want to share in the chat before we go into our first writing exercise. But I definitely think that it is something that I actually like challenge myself to do often, because sometimes I think that I can end up writing like, sometimes especially when I first started writing, I maybe had a little bit more tendency to like dwell on more on topics which are perhaps a bit more challenging for me, which I think is obviously good in some ways, and I do want to write about those things. But actually now something that I do quite often is to like pick something that's really happy and use that as a writing prompt. So I recently wrote a poem called Ode to Baked Potato, and I literally, it's because I was having baked potatoes as comfort food all the time, and I was like, I'll like write baked potato on my page and see what comes up. And it's been one of the like my favorite poems that I've written in ages. So yeah, it is something that I try and do quite regularly. I see what we've got in the chat. Yeah, so someone said a lot more difficult for me than writing about grief. I think that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that, because I think definitely that's something that we've heard in other workshops as well, that people sometimes find it doesn't come to them as naturally. So hopefully we'll be giving you a few things that you could go away and practice tonight. We'll be kind of giving you like a toolkit of a few different exercises to do with us tonight, and then you can see what works for you and take them away. And yeah, someone said sometimes feel lightweight. That's really interesting. Like, how can we make it maybe more of a balance between some happiness and different feelings in there? More about reaching for happiness rather than being in the state of happiness. That's really interesting as well. And someone said found it easier to write about happiness through poetry, e.g. using a scene from nature or a specific idea. Yeah, maybe there's something about it being shorter pieces there. What do you think about what people have shared, Rachel?
And I think that's all really interesting. I think a lot of people, again, from workshops we've done before, have found writing about happiness more tricky sometimes than starting from, you know, a place of grief or anger. And I think Mary's point around sometimes it feels lightweight I think that kind of put people off sometimes, because it can feel like, oh, am I talking about something serious? Am I talking about something other people will be interested in or relate to? Like, is it going to come across as, I don't know, just very self-involved sometimes? And I think actually Elvira's point is a really interesting counter to that sometimes, because if you bring in some happiness to a piece of writing, but then complicate that, maybe that's something you had in the past or something you want to feel more again, or you are very present in it and then you take a step out of it, that kind of disconnect between happiness we have felt or can feel can like put in some of that complexity back in. It's something we might talk about or try later. And yeah, in terms of Louise's point, I think it's really interesting about writing about happiness through poetry, I assume, rather than prose. And I wonder if that's about being like using a scene from nature, a specific idea about being like very present. And I feel like Elspeth, that is a perfect segue into that little poem we were going to read to introduce, because we brought a poem about picking a scene kind of from nature, a specific idea that we think is a really fun example that we were just going to share before we get into some exercises.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to pop it in the chat now, and then I'll also share my screen as well. So this is a poem by Wendy Cope that some of you might know anyway. I'm just going to bring the link up to it. And I think that this is just something that I wanted to share with you before we go into the first exercise, just to sort of show that we can have these happy poems without necessarily needing to put loads of pressure on ourselves, and it can come from a small thing like Louise brought up in the chat there, just from a sort of kind of like specific thing. So I'll just share my screen quickly now. Oh, actually, I don't think, oh, can I share? Yeah, I can share. 2 seconds. Sorry, I don't know why. Rachel, could you share your screen? It's not coming
I
up for
can.
me. I just put it in the
This is
chat.
why
Yeah,
we have two
perfect.
facilitators.
Exactly. So I don't know why it wasn't coming up there. Cool. So I'll just read it aloud quickly. And if anyone has any thoughts or responses to it, please do share them in the chat. So this is The Orange by Wendy Cope. At lunchtime, I bought a huge orange. The size of it made us all laugh. I peeled it and shared it with Robert and Dave. They got quarters and I had a half. And that orange, it made me so happy, as ordinary things often do. Just lately, the shopping, a walk in the park. This is peace and contentment. It's new. The rest of the day was quite easy. I did all the jobs on my list and enjoyed them and had some time over. I love you. I'm glad I exist. Cool. Thank you. I think that you can probably stop the screen share now, Rachel, because people had it in the chat as well. So I think, yeah, I just wanted to share this poem. Yeah, a few people saying in the chat, really delightful poem. I think obviously if this poem didn't respond to you as much as well, that's completely fine too. And feel free to share that, because not every poem works for every person. But even if you didn't love this poem, hopefully you can see that we can use these very small everyday things as stimulus for our writing, and it doesn't have to be like very pressurized when we're writing about happiness. You know, you could just be a bit curious about something that you like an orange, and then go from there.
It never has to be the best thing that ever happened to you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really good way of putting it, Rachel. So I think from there we'll lead into our first writing exercise. And as I say, the way we've designed this workshop, because we've only got an hour, is to be quite short and sweet with the exercises. So there'll be quite short writing times, but then it's very much designed that this is a toolkit for anyone out there who's finding it a little bit difficult to think about incorporating happiness into their writing, to be able to go away and do this and explore this further and develop it afterwards. So the first exercise, to give you just one way into writing happiness, what I'm going to ask you to do at the start is to just for 2 minutes make a list, and literally no pressure, just a list of things that you enjoy doing, or things that so it can either be an activity, so something you enjoy doing. So for example, for me, that would be like laundry, because what I'm going to ask you to do is like think of everyday things that you either a physical object that makes you happy or that you enjoy, or just a kind of like everyday activity. So it could be, for example, going for a walk. Like for me, it would be doing laundry, because I love doing laundry and the smell afterwards and things. Maybe that is quite niche, but it is something that makes me really happy on a kind of like day-to-day basis. Or like, for example, if I was picking an object, I've got this tiny little sweetheart plant next to me. So I'm talking really like low level, like there's no pressure here, just very small things that either you enjoy or might make you smile, or, make you happy in some kind of low pressure way, because as we've just seen, we've got this beautiful poem which is being drawn from an orange. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that now, and then we'll do some writing after that. So just a list at the moment. It doesn't matter if you've only got a couple of things on it. Okay, so I'm just going to bring everyone back into the room as you're ready. And as I say, if you've got loads or if you've only got one thing, that is totally fine. But what I'm going to ask you to do next is just to look over what you've got and circle one of the things that you are drawn to. So just one, can be an object, it can be an activity, whatever you've got on your list that you're drawn to write about a little bit further, because we're going to go into some free writing about this. And doesn't really matter what, because if you like the exercise, you can do it again with one of your other things at different times. So I'll just give you about 30 seconds to do that. And maybe people can give me either a physical thumbs up or a reaction thumbs up when they've got their thing that they've chosen. Cool, yeah, I can see a few thumbs up. Fab. Okay, that's great. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is just to free write about literally what this thing is. So if it's an object, kind of describe what it looks like, what it feels like, or if it's something you do, just really describe the details of it. And when I say free write, what I mean is that there's kind of no rules to free writing other than that you keep going. That's the only rule. So just put pen to paper or your fingers on the keyboard or whatever it is that you're using to write with, and just keep going. We're going to have a very short amount of time for 3 minutes, and don't look back over what you're writing at this stage. This is just totally for you to like get some writing down on the page, and don't edit anything, just see where it takes you. So that's 3 minutes now, just to describe the object or activity and its physical details or how you do it. Okay, we've just got another about 30 seconds here. So I'm just going to invite you to wrap up the idea or the sentence that you're on. And if you're really in the flow, just leave yourself a little phrase or word or something to jog your memory to come back to later. Okay, so I'm just going to invite everyone back into the room now. And what I'm going to ask you to do next is, so we saw in the poem that we just read by Wendy Cope, The Orange, it is very much about the orange and the orange getting halved and things, but then it also kind of zooms out and relates to other things that are obviously happy making in the author's life. So the fact, even the kind of physical detail of the oranges shared, there's obviously these other people in her life, the act of sharing, and then at the last line, I love you, I'm glad it exists, it kind of has this kind of like zooming out effect in the poem. So what I want to ask you to do now is, again, just free writing, so very low pressure and just keep going with it. Even if it's hard or difficult, you can write that, but just going to free write for another 3 minutes. And so you've focused on the details about this thing. Now I'm going to ask you to kind of think a little bit wider. So like, how does it make you feel? What are the emotions that maybe it brings up? Are there any connections to other people perhaps? Or, maybe it's something that you enjoy alone and that's why you like it. So just kind of think at a slightly like more zoomed out level about this thing. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back together.
Sorry, can you say the last thing again?
Oh yeah, sure. So it's just 3 minutes to write about the way this object makes you feel. So anything or the activity. So just thinking at a higher level, like you've described it in detail, but now thinking about, are there any emotions this brings up? Does it connect to other people for you? Like, what does it make you feel? Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
No problem. Thank you for asking. Okay, everyone, we've just got another 30 seconds here. Okay, everyone, I'm just going to invite you back into the room when you're ready. I can see some people are still writing away, so yeah, finish the idea or the sentence you're on, and you can definitely put a little note to come back to you later. And I know that maybe some of you are only in the flow and it feels a bit frustrating to have such short times and be coming back to it, but I actually think that's a really good thing because it shows that you've maybe got something that you're excited to return to later. So hold on to that feeling and know that you can come back to it. And if that exercise didn't work for you, that's totally fine as well, because as we've said, this is about giving you some ideas for exercises to stimulate thinking and writing about happiness, so you can take what works for you and leave what doesn't. And yeah, thanks so much for doing that with me now. I hope that you got something out of it. Maybe we're able to think a little bit more about an object or an everyday activity that you don't always think about that mindfully. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Rachel now, who is going to lead us on another exercise.
Yes, I am. Thanks, Elspeth. So, as we said, we're taking a bit of a toolkit approach to this, and we just want to give you lots of different ways of trying out writing about happiness. And maybe you'll really like some of them and use them again, and maybe you'll ditch them, but you've had a go. So the next one we're going to ask you to try out is I'm going to give you just 1 minute, so even less time than before, to make a list of places you have positive associations with. And they can be real places, they can be fictional places, it can be your favorite armchair or somewhere you really want to go and you've never been, but just 1 minute, places you have positive associations with. Okay, so hopefully people have at least one, maybe two places on their list. Now I'm going to ask you to make the lowest stakes decision ever and pick one and use it for our next writing exercise. So can everyone just pick one and give me a thumbs up or a other indication in some way that you've got one? Ah, amazing. Thank you for the thumbs up. Cool. So I'm just going to ask you for the next about 3.5 minutes to go into that place. I'm going to give you some prompts for free out as we go, but I'd like you to start by just, again, free writing and describing what you can see when you're in that place, or yeah, what, pick a sense and go with it, what you can see to start off with. Okay, now I'm going to invite you to bring in another sense. So bring in one more sense to your description, might be what you can hear. And last kind of 20 seconds, bring in one last sense. So that might be touch, taste, smell. Bring in one last sense. Okay, so I'm going to rudely interrupt you and encourage you to just draw a line or make a note of whatever it was you had in your mind when you're writing that, because there's one more part to this writing exercise around going to places. I'm just going to encourage you now, I'm going to give you another 3 minutes or so, and have a think about bringing someone with you to this place. That could be anyone you like, but just have a go at bringing someone with you to that place. You might want to travel there. They might just suddenly appear. You could go there on a train. You could take a walk there. Whatever might make sense. Doesn't have to make sense. But yeah, that's the challenge. Bring someone with you to this place for another 3 minutes. Okay. Your extremely short time to try that out has now come to an end. So yeah, just make a little note of anything you wish you could carry on with. And again, as Elsa said, we're hoping that you have a whole bunch of starts that you can keep working on after the session, maybe bring together in some way. So yeah, thank you so much for trying that out, and I will hand you back to Elspeth.
Great, thanks so much. So it took me a minute to come off mute there, Rachel, because I was enjoying the exercise so much. I was doing it as well. That was really great. Thank you. And I think a really good reminder that it can be really nice to bring the senses into our writing as well, especially, yeah, if we're trying to write about something joyful, because I feel like there's probably so many kind of like smells and sounds and things which are so evocative of particular places. So that was great. Thank you. What I'm going to ask everyone to do now is to just think for a minute of something that you associate with hope or happiness. And it can be from your list before if you've got something there already. But this time I'm going to ask you to think of like an actual object. So yeah, so for me, for example, I would probably say like that little plant that I showed you before, the little sweetheart plant, because it's always, you know, like even when it's a bit neglected, it's still green and it's managed to survive my not very good gardening skills. So just going to ask you to think of something for about 30 seconds.
So sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, of course, no problem. I'll put it in the chat as well. So just think of something, an object that you associate with hope or happiness. And it can be something that you own personally, or it could be something else. You know, it doesn't have to be something in your house. It could be something someone else has, or something just sort of general, like a daffodil or something.
Thank you.
Okay, if people could just give me a thumbs up when they've got something, either physical or reaction. Cool. I can see a few thumbs up coming through. Fab, that's great. So what I'm going to ask you to do next is, if you're comfortable with it, is just to put what you've thought of in the chat box. So just to type it in. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I would invite you to put it in the chat box if you're happy to. So I will put mine in, sweetheart plant. Okay, so we've got beeswax candle, tulips, my running trainers, rose quartz, the new leaves are opening everywhere, trinket box, my favorite mug, the tulips on my windowsill, woven magazine rack. Cool, yeah, so we've got such a mix of things. A washing line full of washing on a dry, windy day. Wow, that's very poetic. I love that. The lone seedling in a tray of all planted seedlings, my mother's voice, my tea caddy. Yeah, so you can see that we've got a massive range of all different things here. And what I'm going to ask you to do is just to pick one of these things and so ideally you can use your own thing if you want, but I would encourage you to pick someone else's thing that they put in, maybe just one that you're drawn to because either maybe it relates to you, or maybe you're like, oh, I don't really get that, but I'd like to explore it. It doesn't really matter, just one that you're drawn to, and just use that as a prompt for a free write. So again, this is going to be very short. We'll probably have about 4 minutes here, and it's just going to be a prompt. So obviously it could go in whatever direction you want it to, but just be open to it. And once you've picked your thing, free write on it for about 4 minutes, this object that you know inspires hope in somewhere else, and see where that takes you. So I'll put those instructions in the chat, but otherwise I'll see you in 4 minutes. We've got about another 60 seconds here. Okay, I'm just going to invite you back into the room when you're ready. So just finishing the word or the phrase that you're on. And thank you so much for doing that with me and being open to using someone else's prompt. Hopefully that's just, yeah, shown that, there's lots of different inspiration for writing about hope and happiness out there. And I'm going to hand back over to Rachel, who's going to continue the theme with the final exercise of thinking about maybe other people's happiness and how we can use that in our own writing.
Thanks, Elspeth. And yeah, just to echo, thanks everyone for sharing your prompts and thoughts in the chat. I picked someone else's and did the exercise and I loved it. So thank you for taking my brain in a new direction. Cool. So the last exercise we're going to try in your kind of writing happiness toolkit, just another way to try and get into something that can feel a bit weird, is to think about writing about happiness that we see around us. So I'm just going to give you, I think this is a bit trickier, so I'm going to give you a minute to think about a person, an animal, a plant, an inanimate object, something you watched on TikTok, anything at all recently that you saw that you thought seemed happy to you. So make a list, things that you've seen that seemed happy to you. It could be people, plants, animals, anything. Okay, so hopefully people have at least one on your list, which is great. That's all you need. But now I'd like to ask you to pick one from your list and just try free writing for just a couple of minutes just to describe it. So try and describe it. What's it doing? How's it behaving? Where is it? Yeah, quite literally describe. We'll get into more later. Okay, and if you haven't already, I'm going to encourage you just for the last 3 minutes of free writing that we're going to do today, move into describing how did witnessing this happiness, whatever it was, impact on you, or what was your relationship, or did it change your behavior or your thoughts or your actions? So try and bring some of that in if you haven't already. Last kind of 20 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to invite everyone once again to be rudely interrupted by me. Make a note, draw a line, put a star by the thing that you were going to just put down before I stopped you, and yeah, invite you to come back into the room. Cool, well done everyone. You've just written a whole load of stuff and you've tried out all the approaches that we could think of in terms of taking inspiration from writing happiness. So it would be really lovely to hear from you guys in the chat about how you found that, if you had anything that worked particularly well for you or didn't work and that you found difficult. I'd be really interested to hear how that was for you.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Rachel said. Thank you so much for being just so open to this and being so generous with your time and your thoughts about your hopeful objects and things as well. And just to say, if anyone's sitting there like that exercise didn't really work for me, or like maybe you went down a bit of a road which was actually made you feel a little melancholy in some ways, like that's okay. Like it's totally fine. Not every exercises work for every person, and as people were saying at the start, sometimes like the way that we maybe get to writing about happiness is by balancing it through other things, and it's something that isn't necessarily completely straightforward or non-conflicted for us. So I think it was just really thank you so much. And you can see we've got a few comments in the chat. Quick exercises, yes, they were very quick, but I'm glad that they were able to bring up loads of ideas. to the person who suggested a blank journal, that's great, Mary, to hear that you really got on well with someone else's prompt. That's really nice, because it can definitely take you down a route that you would never have got to on your own. I find those kind of things really useful for me. Someone saying, Meg saying, I wrote a really heartfelt piece for that last one about a spider plant called Sean, who one of the managers brought in from home after rescuing him from a poorly placed window. And how Sean has now truly come into himself and grown and developed, and how the right environment can work wonders on plants and people. That's so interesting, like, because it's exactly what we were talking about at the beginning, how there's like, it's kind of about a spider plant, but it's also about all these other things too. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
No, definitely. That's brilliant. Oh, that's really interesting. Loads of things coming through on the chat. Yeah, lots of people have said that maybe taking inspiration from someone else's prompt, or kind of focusing on something quite small, has thrown up maybe more than they thought it would. So that's really lovely to hear. And it's definitely something you can kind of recreate on your own. Like, you can make your own like prompt jars, or there are lots of things on the internet that will do this for you, or you could do it with a friend or a writing group as well. So hopefully it's something you can replicate in the future if you enjoyed that particular exercise. People did rose quartz. Oh, lovely. Enjoyed every writing class. Shows something with ducks. Brilliant. Okay, it's really lovely to hear that people have found this useful. Great. Cool.
Rachel, did you just want to have a poem that you wanted to share with us just before we wrap up for the evening and let everyone go and have their dinner?
Yeah, I can have to dash off. I was just going to close us out with one last example of a kind of happy poem to leave you with. Not an uncomplicated happy poem, but one that I really enjoy. So I'm just going to get that up on the screen now, and also share the link. There we go. Yeah, so I'll just read this out, and then we will all go off and have our respective evenings and long weekends. So there you go. This is A Portable Paradise by Roger Robinson. And if I speak of paradise, then I'm speaking of my grandmother, who told me to carry it always on my person, concealed, so no one else would know but me. That way they can't steal it, she'd say. And if life puts you under pressure, trace the ridges in your pocket, smell its piney scent on your handkerchief, hum its anthem under your breath. And if your stresses are sustained and daily, get yourself to an empty hotel room, be it hotel, hostel, or hovel. Find a lamp and empty your paradise onto a desk, your white sands, green hills, and fresh fish. Shine the lamp on it like the fresh hope of morning, and keep staring at it till you sleep. So yeah, that's what we wanted to leave you with. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We'd love to see you. We quite often regularly run either free or pay what you can workshops. So we'd love to see you at them in the future. You can find us on Twitter or Instagram, and yeah, it was just really, really lovely. Like, this has really lifted my mood for the evening, and it was really nice. And thank you to Rachel for sharing that poem, because I think it just reinforces the point of this workshop, obviously, was to do some writing, give you some ingredients for your own writing, but also just to say that writing happiness doesn't have to be so uncomplicated, because I think that's when we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and we're like, how can it be purely happy? But obviously, you know, there's all different emotions in both in that poem, and even in the poem we read before, there was kind of a hinterland, and that, you know, that person's glad they exist now, but maybe they weren't so much in the past. So definitely, if this workshop was a little complicated for you, that is totally fine as well. But just thank you so much for your generosity, and it was really lovely to spend an hour with you on a Friday evening. It's really set me up really nicely for my weekend, and I feel really refreshed by all your company and generosity.
No, absolutely. Well said, Elspeth. Thank you, everyone. All right. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, take care. Have a lovely weekend.